A terrible accident on the boat changed everything for the crew under the gray sky. They had just pulled the last crab trap of the day when the scene began to shift. The deck was piled with overflowing nets under the cloudy horizon, and joy filled the air. Laughter mixed with the sound of the waves, every man proud of their hard-earned success. But the sea turned rough, and the mood darkened like a fast-moving storm. Shouts echoed across the wet deck, warning each other to stay away from the dangerous edge. One of the bravest fishermen would soon meet the ocean's cold depth. The storm arrived suddenly, crashing into the boat like a wall of gray water. Jake's team had hauled in 60 pots, chasing the dream of a massive catch. They had pushed beyond limits in the deep sea, hoping for the ultimate reward. Each trap carried up to 300 crabs, glistening under the wet light. They thought they had finally earned the brutal Northern Ocean's respect. But the weather cared nothing for their effort beneath the heavy clouds. A sudden beep from the sonar pierced the quiet inside the damp cabin. Captain Jake glanced up, his eyes narrowing with instant concern. It was not a sound he had heard before in all his years on the water. His instincts, sharpened by storms, told him the scene was about to change. He warned the crew to tread carefully on the slick deck, fearing the anchor cable. If the cable snapped, it would whip like a deadly snake across the boat. The waves pounded hard, sending rain sideways across every face. Jake's voice rose above the chaos, sharp against the roar of the storm. The winch twisted violently, turning into a steel trap for anyone nearby. A deckhand slipped when the cable jerked forward on the trembling planks. Panic spread instantly, freezing the crew in the tense moment. Through the sheets of rain, another vessel appeared in the distance. It was the Wizard, a ship Jake had seen but never so close in raging weather. The boats closed in, the risk of collision hanging heavy in the fog. Both crews fought to keep the vessels apart, shouting over the roaring sea. They missed each other by inches, but the fear stayed in the air. There was no time for blame under the shadow of a deadly storm. The ocean respected no man, no experience, only its own wild power. Then, in one tragic instant, a crewman lost his footing on the slick deck. He plunged into the freezing Bering Sea, disappearing into black water. The icy grip swallowed him faster than broken shards of floating ice. Silence spread across the deck, the earlier joy gone like fading light. No crab, no paycheck could fill the space left on that rocking boat. Jake ordered them back to work, but each crashing wave felt like a cruel reminder. There was no space for grief under the restless eyes of the storm. Then a new sound came from below the deck, deep and unfamiliar. Not anchor, not cable, something hidden under the metal floor. Jake's instincts roared. Staying longer could mean certain death. The crew gripped the icy rails, waiting for the captain's call. One wrong decision could send more into the deadly sea. The Wizard's captain blamed Jake over the crackling radio for the near crash. But there was no time for argument when death floated on every rolling wave. The Bering Sea's edge was sharp and cold like frozen steel. Just when the crew thought it was over, another storm appeared on the horizon. The Wizard's men scrambled to repair gear under the low gray sky. Their captain said they had done well, even with disaster so close in the spray. But the real storm stayed in their thoughts, heavy as sunken anchors. They knew the risks, especially after a day painted in dark scenes. Today it was Jake's crew, tomorrow, it could be anyone lost to the depths. A massive swell slammed into Jake's boat, tilting it sharply toward the sea. Jacob nearly went overboard but caught the rail with frozen hands. Shivering from cold and shock, he managed a weak smile. It was the kind worn by those who face fear in silence under the pale sky. Jake saw it but knew the work had to go on across the wet deck. He shouted an apology, but Jacob simply waved through trembling fingers. The ocean had almost taken another soul from the worn wood. Far off on the summer bay, Captain Wild Bill battled his own terror. One of his men slipped into the churning water, vanishing into foam. They pulled him out barely breathing, skin cold as winter ice. Bill knew they had to continue, though fear clung like fog to the crew. The Bering Sea rarely offers a second chance under a shifting sky. That week, Jake, Wild Bill, Keith, and Harley faced more than most see in long years. They endured loss, near collision, bitter cold, and endless storms. Money no longer mattered beneath the weight of the sea. It became about survival on a cruel and ancient ocean. The ocean cared nothing for names or history, only for testing every sailor. They fished for the thrill, the challenge, and sometimes the fading hope. But some days the cost was too high, like a wave stealing light from the sky. The sea took more than it gave, swallowing laughter into deep shadows. Jake felt it deep in his bones under the rocking boat. Every captain learns that storms leave no room for mercy on the water. After years of battles with wind and waves, Jake knew one truth. The ocean never forgives, it only grants the chance to keep moving across the sea. It lets you live another day beneath its gray horizon, if you are lucky. Subscribe to our channel and thanks for watching.